Welcome to the Once and Future Authors Podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so delighted today to be joined by author Chris Jones. Chris is the author of Headcase, book one, Shock and Denial. It's a book all about mental health, athletes, and a whole lot of other good stuff. You're going to be thrilled to meet him, so please welcome Chris Jones. Nice to have you.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me. Very
Oh,
excited to
thrilled to
talk.
have you, and love the book. I'm not really an athlete myself, but the mother of children who are into sports, and I remember years ago hearing anecdotally that somebody who was a prisoner of war who loved playing golf every day while they were in prison, they played a whole 4-hour round of golf in their head, and when they came out of this terrible situation, their handicap had improved tremendously. And ever since then, I was hoping that somebody would cross my desk who could talk to me about you know sports and athleticism and your head. So is is that actually possible, or was that
Yeah, I read that same story. I know exactly when he was, I think he was in the Hanoi Hilton, and then he came out and like shot an 82 the first time he got out of jail after not playing, and because he played those rounds in his head. Yeah, definitely for athletes and visualizations is really, really important. Seeing how the game is going to go. Even Dr. Andrew Beck, my protagonist, he talks about that with his patients and everything. Yeah, mental health in sports is a really big deal. And I was a competitive athlete and in judo and wrestled in college and had, lots of injuries and things and really had some, and I struggled with eating disorders and other things until I switched to judo, which was really much more healthy for me and got to do everything. And I wound up training with some Olympians. And I also spent a lot of time around pro athletes when I was younger. And, they have some of the same issues that we all have, and then I don't think they get a whole lot of sympathy because they're rich, they're famous, they're doing something that only 0.01% of the world can do. But there a lot of during my research, there was a lot of athletes that just had horrific childhoods. There was one study where pro basketball players had the same anxiety levels as men and women on the front lines. So it's a real thing.
this past Olympics, I think it was the gymnast from
Simone
America.
Biles.
Yes, and Simone dropped out of several events, citing mental health and safety, that
Mm.
her safety was absolutely at risk. And I'm so glad to see that people didn't bash on her, but rather were hailing her as a champion and hero of not just gymnastics, but of people to have a lot more openness about this.
Yeah, that's really important. It was a very brave thing for her to do. And again, the safety issues, if she does a backflip and lands on her head, she could die.
Right.
And this happens in other athletes and where they're playing sports where they could really get very seriously injured. And that happens a lot where their body's ready, but their mind isn't. And I bring that up. And this is one of the issues around sports psychology is if the sports psychologist works for the team, he has to report what happens in those sessions to it. So even though, he may go back or he or she might go back to the team and say, their body, yeah, they're fully healed from their injury, but their head's not. That they may like, hey, we need them to suit up and get out there. And that happens. And I bring that up in the book as well.
Yeah, and they have to suit it up even physically. I remember there was another gymnast who had to do a vault on a broken foot just to get the points or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened playing injured. That happens a
Oh
lot. But
my gosh. Well, such an important topic, and I'm so glad you tackled it. But I'm curious why you tackled it in the form of a novel. So can you bring me back to where you started, like thinking I want to write this book, and how it took this form?
yeah, so as a competitive athlete, I was always very interested in what happened when an athlete fails and how they got over it, how they dealt with failure. I dealt with lots of failure as well as success. And, just I knew when I lost my matches, I played them over and over in my head, for a week or two until the next tournament. And I often wonder, like, what did they do? And so a lot of times, like, oh, okay, they went and spoke to a sports psychologist. And then my favorite question as a writer is, what if? And well, what if that sports psychologist has more issues than the patients he's treating? And Dr. Andrew Beck, he's a sports psychologist, but he was also a golf prodigy, and he's the son of Masters champion Ted Beck. And
Mm,
he had this idea of them both having being the first father and son Masters champions, and he pushed Andrew to a breaking point. And at 18, being the top ranked amateur, he walked away from the game to pursue psychology, and their relationship never healed after that. So, I mean, these are all real things that happen with generational trauma, as well as, what happens. And his father taught him how to manipulate people, how to get in people's heads, how to psych out his opponents. And that was the way. And so now, and that's also now the fact that he left golf, he still had that competitive nature. And then it kind of turned like anything else. If you don't have an outlet for it, the shadow part comes out, and he has a gambling addiction. So
mm.
that's the part where he has issues, and he needs that ability. So he goes and he gambles in this underground casino called the Five Iron, and he's able to use all his skills as a psychologist against his opponents, read their tells, look at what their body language is doing and facial expressions, and he able to use that to win. And his whole thing isn't even about the money, it's about really understanding his opponent and being able to master them mentally. And that's all kind of okay in that world. Not okay in the world we live in. Not okay in the psych, but he does care about his patients very much, but he compartmentalizes, and he has major issues.
Wow. And what are you hoping that when people are reading this, even just reading the reviews on it, I feel like, yes, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about, what's going on. I mean, goodness, my own kids, when they played Little League, there's a big sign up, these are kids. Don't yell at them. And it's almost horrifying that they had to put that sign up.
Yeah. I was a soccer coach too, and I coached boys, and my boys went undefeated. And I would often say, look, one coach, that's me. Parents, be quiet, and I often talked to them about it, and I kept a real safe place for them. And where I told them the rules on the team are, number one, everyone gives me 100%, and two, no one's allowed to yell at each other. And we kept a very safe space. We had a lot of fun. I'm a kid at heart, and we went undefeated. And it works when you do it in the right way. You can bring that together. Yeah, I think that the timing was just happened to work out. This has always been something I've been passionate about, and now it's really great that it's coming to the forefront, and people are starting to talk about mental health in sports. Michael Phelps' weight of gold,
Yes.
and it's okay to not be okay, and to be able to talk about it. We have such a stigma around talking about mental health and our various issues, and athletes are human just like everyone else. So I try to bring it up in the book in ways that you don't have to be a sports fan, or you don't even have to really know anything about it. I think some of the best comments I got from my readers were from people who had really, they weren't sports fans, but we've all suffered trauma, and we can all relate to that. And that's what I really try to bring out, so you can really see the human element. And I wrote it in a first person point of view. So you're really in Andrew's head the entire time, and understanding what he's going through, feeling what he's feeling. One of the best comments I got from one of my female readers, he said it was a great look into the male psyche. Now, I wrote it, I'm male, right? So I just wrote it the way that I'm telling what Andrew's thinking, what he's feeling, what he's seeing, what he's tasting, what he's going through. But for a woman, it was like a really interesting view, like, oh, that's how men think. I'm like, yeah. So that wasn't like an unintended consequence. But if I can bring some aware, I want the people to be entertained first and foremost. And then if I can bring some awareness around mental health, generational trauma, mental health in sports, that would be fantastic. I really would love that.
Yeah. Now, every single book that someone writes, I mean, we leave a piece of ourselves in that book. Is Andrew you? Are you,
No.
is that a piece of you that you got to explore? Or is it somebody that you were looking at and you said, let me explore that for that person?
Yeah, no. There's Easter eggs all through it of things that happen in my life. There's all
Mhm.
sorts of those things that are real. Uh, but as far as the characters, they're an amalgamation of all my research. But no, we're nothing alike.
Nothing
And
alike.
no, nothing alike, which is interesting, right? It's an interesting to write someone who is very different. And
Mhm.
but all the characters in there, there's uh, I think I don't really see myself in them. Although writing this, I say it's like one of the best forms of therapy I ever had, because I
Mhm.
had to put myself in those positions, and to really get myself to those emotional areas, I had to uncover a lot. I had a lot of time. It was pandemic. I was stuck by myself, even down in Barbados where I wrote the book, for several months we were under lockdown, and it was a lot of time to just kind of really get to certain areas where, you really need to, when you're writing it, I need to bring that emotion to the page and put it there. So I'm really feeling it and understanding where those feelings in me came from, even though, so there's definitely parts where I read it and I still get emotional from, and still trying to discover where that comes from, and what part of my psyche is it coming from. So yeah, it was a very healing process, even for me, in this make-believe world that I created, as sort of alternative reality to 2019 pre-pandemic, and see what the world he plays in, and being able to work that through. And yes, it was a great form of therapy for me, and writing is a wonderful form.
Oh, absolutely. And you certainly can't be writing about generational trauma without it affecting you emotionally. I mean, that's, I would think, almost impossible
Yeah.
writing about something like that. And like you said, you're taking a composite of all of your research. Tell me a little bit about research, because I always find with, of course, nonfiction authors heavily researched, but people question, well, what are you researching for fiction? Tell me a little bit about your research.
Oh my God, everything is research, and being stuck, even the places. So a lot of the places really exist, and some of them I created and made up. And being able to go on Google Maps and look at things like where he lives and where the Five Irons is. It's on Mercer Street. I found like this little, there's an on Mercer Street, which is one of my favorite streets in Manhattan. There's an elevator with a camera on it, and now it's facing the street. I'm like, that's it. That's where he goes. And he goes down into the Five Iron to do his gambling. Like, that's where it's located, and being able to do all that. So yeah, lots of research, what they're wearing, their clothes. There's a lot of detail in here. There's no excuse. The internet is so amazing. So if you read anything that takes you out of the story, then, or anything that I write or anyone, then we didn't do our research. This time I'm writing the second book now, and I got smart this time, and I have a Word document with every link. And so I'm 100 pages into the first draft, and I have 10 pages of just links and pictures and things like that. So
Wow.
I mean, it's so amazing. It was really, that was fun. It's really interesting, Stephanie. I despise research in all areas of my life. Despise it. Absolutely despise it. I will not research vacations. Like, one real quick story. I had won like a charity auction for a vacation on this island in the Caribbean. And I was supposed to take my girlfriend at the time. We broke up. So I took my best friend. And a week before we're supposed to get there, I look up the place and I'm like, hey, Mike, this is a honeymoon place. And so we had very interesting
No.
questions to answer when we got there. It's so it was like, I don't research things, but when I write, I research things to the nth degree, because it's so important for me that my reader feel the story is authentic, that they feel the characters are authentic, what they're wearing, what they're seeing, what they're smelling, what they're tasting, the environment that they're in, the world that I built. I want them to be immersed in it. And so in order to do that, I got to do my homework. And yeah, there's hours and hours of research, because I want it to be seamless. When they say, oh my God, it was a page turner, great. I had you really involved in the world and the characters and this and that. And those are the things that are subtle.
Yeah.
So it's very, very subtle, and they're not even really noticing it most times. But if you can capture them and really be passionate about the world that you're creating and the characters and every little minute detail. I was an accountant by profession, so I tend to be very, very detail oriented, and I see things very visually too. So I see what they look like, what's going on, how their body's moving, and I try to describe it.
Well, I love what you said about not wanting your reader to be taken out of the world. And that's exactly, you nailed it. That's my experience. If I'm reading something and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. I've been on that street. The Starbucks is on the left. Now, like I'm a little, OCD about things, and I'll suddenly start to realize that there's an error, and you described it perfectly. I'm taken out of the world. There
Yeah.
was a little glitch, and now I'm not immersed. And I'm so glad also, another takeaway I want to focus on is that you're talking about building that world. And so often it's my fantasy writers, it's sci-fi writers who talk about world building. But even though yours takes place right here, it could be a street I've walked down, you're still building a world, and you're making
Mm.
sure through your research that you're doing it correctly. I'm just so glad that you said that, because not every contemporary novelist that I speak to says it in such clear terms that you have to make sure that your world is seamless, even if your world is Manhattan. It has to be the right thing. So I so appreciate you saying that, and I thank you.
Thanks.
I have to ask you. It says book one, shock
Hmm.
and denial on your cover. So is that a promise for more?
Yep, I'm 100 pages into the first draft of book two. So it'll pick up right where that one and this is only takes place a week in his life. It's just 1 week. So it's 380 pages of 1 week of how his life goes from, a life we would all want, down to, he's kind of self-destructing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it goes when you do get into those spirals, and I've seen it firsthand. So yeah, there's definitely book two is coming. I'm working on it, the outline. It was really interesting. I've done, you learn so much, I think, from first book to second book. So if there's now I had like a full outline. And I was at the Writers Digest conference, and they said, like, there's two kind of writers. There's the plotters
Huh?
and the pantsers. Plotters outline everything to the nth degree, and pantsers just sit down and write. And I would say I'm in the middle of those. I like an outline, but I learned a real valuable lesson from Neil Gaiman's masterclass about letting your characters speak to you and listen to them. And so I let them really, it sounds odd, right? But I let them speak to me and tell me more about them. I learned so much about my characters and things that I didn't know about them. And if you let them sort of tell you the story of what they wanted to come out, I know it's coming from my brain, but if you can put yourself in that position of like, okay, talk to me and let me know what you want, then it comes pretty quickly, and you can tell a really, really good story that way. And that's my goal. I want my readers to be entertained.
Fantastic. Well, you as a writer obviously are evolving as well. How are you finding book two as compared to book one, writing wise? Easier,
Yeah.
harder, putting up more roadblocks? What's going on?
Well, book marketing is a huge distraction.
Oh,
Where I didn't have that. Book one, I wrote it down in my home in Barbados, looking out at the ocean. I took breaks and jumped in the water and, find animal clouds and animals in the clouds. And that was my breaks. And it was a really wonderful environment to write in. Couldn't ask for a better environment. Now I have to deal with marketing the first one while writing the second one. Yeah, it's been a distraction. And went through a cover redesign that the one that we'd have that you showed is the new cover. That means a new website. That means, a lot of other things. So that's been the hardest part. And then, like, I need 4 to 5 hours of block time, and then blocking that time out without getting the interruptions. So that's been difficult. I would be dead honest and say that that's the hard part, but I still enjoy it. I still like going back and visiting. There was a period in time where I remember I was like in my house here, and I was like, I miss my characters. These people have been living in your head, and I hadn't done anything in a couple of months. And then now so it's like, I miss them. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but
no,
yeah,
no.
I kind of miss them. And so it's really good to get back into them. And there's a lot of really fun people in the book. And there's an unusual kind of cast of characters that I think people are able to picture.
Absolutely. Well, most people who are listening are incredibly jealous right now that you wrote a book in Barbados. So you definitely have to tell me at least one bad thing
Yeah.
about sitting on a beach writing a book. Tell me how terrible it is. The sand got into your laptop, because right now we're all just wanting to move in. If I
Uh,
press
yeah,
your
just
image.
Well, leaving the door open and the sandfly sometimes get in and bite my ankles, but
Okay, there we go.
that was it. Everything else I would say is wonderful. Yeah, I always wanted to write, and but I have both sides in my brain. I'm neurotransparent, I think is the name. I can use both sides pretty equally, and so I have a analytical side as well as a creative side. And so I was studying accounting in college because I just didn't feel, comfortable in the English department. But my sophomore English professor said, "Chris, you're really talented. You should switch and pursue your writing." And I said, "Look, I just don't want to be a poor starving artist, so I'll go make some money and then I'll write." So, I mean, ups and downs in careers. I started my first company doing accounting consulting at 23. Uh, built that up and got into tech and started my first tech company, did really well. Took that money, put it into a mobile gaming company in 2001, and it was right before 9/11, and then lost everything that I made, and lost everything after that. I had to rebuild, rebuilt my consulting company, sold it, and formed another company in construction equipment, built that up over 10 years, sold it. And my last day at my company that I was the CFO and that I co-founded was January 31st, 2020.
Oh my gosh.
And then, I had a month to kind of figure out what my life was going to be. And then boom, we went right into pandemic. I was like, so I often say that, the pandemic's my fault because my goals in January 2020 were one, to spend more time in my house, and two, to have isolated time to write. Like, wish granted. So,
So you're
and
the reason we had COVID.
it's
Okay.
my fault. I take
I'm
full
glad
responsibility.
we finally got to the bottom of
But
it.
yeah, it's it's been a really good journey. It's what I've always wanted to do. I have a lot more stories in me, and I'm excited to get this one as well as the book two, and
Well,
hopefully I can finish it before the end of the year.
well, Chris, I don't care how many stories you have in you. Please stop causing pandemics, okay?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how we all adjusted to that, right? How many people really put them down, um and how many other people they were able to switch their careers. They found balance in their life. So I think in everything where there's suffering, there's also an opportunity for personal growth. Um, and I think we just have to look at all these times as hard as they may be, where's the opportunity? I mean, even losing everything. I think there's nothing worse than being poor, making money and losing it all. And it totally destroyed my confidence
Mm,
and everything. And it just, you feel you're cursed. And then a friend of mine said to me, don't worry about it, Chris, you're a survivor. And I'm like, yeah, I am a survivor. And you just, you work yourself through it. And those things really, really help. But I was definitely beating myself up. And I think, as much hardship as there is, you got to find, in my opinion, you have to find where the gold is in there that you can mine in that, and then, bring your life and make it something that you always want to do. I mean, I used to come home at night after to write, so I'd work 12, 14 hours a day, come home and a couple of the nights and weekends just to start writing, to get back into it, and I think if you want something bad enough, you'll figure out a way.
yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And but book two will be very different. Now, not only are you marketing book one, which I am so glad you pointed out the fact that marketing a book is probably as hard, if not harder, than writing a book in many cases.
Harder, harder.
Yeah. And so many people think that when you type the words the end on the book that you actually finished.
No, it took several months just to get the production right. Just and I, independently published it through Amazon KDP,
Mm,
and yeah, it took a couple months, and I had editors and people helping me with it. It was hard just to get the production part and then start going into marketing, which is really, really hard. I never
right,
sold
right.
anything in my life for that's at $20,
Exactly, exactly. And now you're doing all of that. And the pandemic, I mean, I certainly not the CDC, but you're no longer sitting on a beach in Barbados as much as you look like it. And our days, you're right. We had huge blocks of time during lockdown, and now we're back.
Right.
So how do you carve out the time now?
Yeah, I've always been really, really big about time management as an entrepreneur. just so many things. But I still believe in having balance in my life. And so what I do is I actually plan it out. Every day I do a daily plan and to block out my hours. And even yesterday, and you got to find different things. Yesterday I needed some block time to finish. I have the audiobook will be coming out for Christmas. So the
Fantastic.
audio version. So I'm working on some of the things for the audiobook, and I just went to a cafe and just, around the corner, and for 2 hours just got some focus work done. So you have to find out. So I'm really, it's always adapting and adjusting, but I'm really careful about planning out my time. That's the accountant side. So even like, I have that side. One quick other story, people ask me how long it took. Well, I kept a timesheet to keep that analytical part of my mind quiet. So it took 714 and a half hours
Oh
to write it.
my gosh.
I got it down in a half hour. And
I can't believe you kept a timesheet like that. That's magnificent.
yeah, so I keep a timesheet because I wanted to know, but it also kept that side. We have those sides, that positive side of our brain, and then our other side, I don't know, like me, who says I can't do things, and then I have an attitude problem, like, yes, I can. Like the best way to get me to do something is say I can't do it, I'll do it. But that helped give that side of my brain a metric to focus on so I could be creative and let the artist take over. And after so many years of the CFO being in charge, now the artist gets to be in charge.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. And as I said earlier, what an inspiration for writers out there to hear about how you manage. I have never in my life had someone who clocked their time before on a book. That's brilliant, because wasn't there something that said you can become an expert at anything if you devote 10,000
10,000
hours?
hours. Yeah.
Okay, so you did 700 plus on the writing, which means how many hours are going to be left for marketing?
Yeah.
9,300 hours on
That's right. Something
marketing.
like that. Right. So yeah, I definitely do believe in the 10,000 hours and being able to work that. And I'm learning. I know I'll get better. I believe this book is good. It's won 2 awards, one from Literary Titans, another one from Reader's Review, Reader's Favorite. Yeah. So it's
Mhm.
won two awards, and this is my first book, and I know I'll get better as a writer, and I'm excited about that I'm gonna get better at telling stories. I'm excited about I'm gonna get better at grammar and not mess up my tenses and things that I've learned, so it's a really good thing. And I think it's really important in life. For me, I always had a what's next plan after I kind of retired as an entrepreneur. I knew going in here, this is something I wanted to go out and be good at it. Like anything I take up, I want to be good at it. And that takes work. It takes learning, and grammar wasn't something I had to use the same way. Going from spreadsheets to Microsoft Word, a big difference. But I'm excited at knowing that I'll get better. I'm excited at learning from people and how much people teach me, and getting feedback from the readers and what they liked and the things that I didn't even notice. And that to me is like the real reward, is when people talk to me about how my work spoke to them and what they got out of it, what they liked, the scene. And then I can tell them, like, there's so many Easter egg behind every scene. There's something in it that did happen in or close to my real life or where it comes from. And then I tell them the story behind it.
Nice, nice. Tell me something so that all of our listeners could know. If I were going to be buying a copy of your book today as a gift for someone, can you describe who on my gift list I should be buying it for?
Yeah, I think anyone who really likes being lost in a novel that just needs to be entertained for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, a great book that you can pick up and put down, just read a few pages at night. I think anyone who's really interested in a thriller and suspenseful, if you like suspense and wondering what's going to happen next, and what else is this character going to get into, that's the type of book. It's a great beach, lake, house, or now as we get into the colder weather, take it to the ski lodge or a cabin place in front of a fire. And yeah, and just seeing what happens to this guy's life when he starts making some bad decisions, right? We all do. But you can go out to my website. It's www.chriskjones.com, and then you can either we'll be able to take direct buys pretty soon, but you can go to Amazon. You can look it up, Chris K. Jones, Headcase. And then the audiobook will be coming out, right around the holidays. So right before Christmas, I hope to be able to launch that. And yeah, that's going to be really exciting. The actor is really, really good. I think people are going to love it. So I'm
Fantastic.
excited.
Please, when all that happens, tag me on a link on social media so we can be sure to share it with our audiences.
Okay, great. Sounds
I'm
good.
super excited. When are you anticipating? I know there's no way of knowing for sure, but your next book.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is, hopefully by the next spring, if we can. I mean, that's one of the beauties of independent publishing. I don't have to wait for the publisher's schedule, and as soon as it's done and edited, you can get done, so you can put it out there. So
Fantastic.
hopefully next spring.
All right. We'll be looking for it. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for such a terrific book, and happy
Thank
writing.
you. Appreciate it.